Hello. Today I want to talk to you about clusters. Okay, clusters on Desktop Studio. Let's just log in to Desktop Studio and authenticate. Perfect, also via phone. Okay, great. So, what does Desktop Studio do with clusters? Our aim is nothing less than revolutionize the way people think about clusters. Because today, a cluster is a pretty static thing. You build it if you have if you are a large company, you may build one or two large clusters. Everybody has to submit their batch jobs to that huge cluster, and according to priority of the project, it will be simulated or not. It will be calculated or not. Okay, and the huge cluster is either full or empty, but there is never the optimal use of that cluster. It just stands around. Okay, what Desktop Studio wants to do or wants to provide you with is cluster on demand. You as an engineer have the possibility to fire up a cluster on demand, and this is what we are going to show you today. Okay, now first of all, I've connected into my farm. I've already set up a cluster. It has 2 nodes. We are going to examine how that works in a second, the cluster. And here we have the master node. The master node you can use how you like it to. The master node basically is a Windows desktop OS with your applications installed. Okay, so first of all, we are going to connect to our master. Here we can select whether we want to use multi or single screen, and just hit the connect button to connect, to issue the RDP connection to the master desktop. Now, what is the master desktop for? It's basically a VM we've set up before. I can show you the process in a second. Here, what we have installed on the master VM is we have already some applications installed. We can see them here, Flow3D, there is ANSYS installed, and I don't know, Google Chrome is installed as well. Here we can see that everything happened automatically. We could easily add or remove some applications, okay, based on the needs you have. Okay, so with this master VM, you can do pretty much everything. You can use it for small simulations, you can use it for pre and post processing, you can use it as your regular working machine where you have your Outlook and Office 365 installed as well. Okay, and here we can see the cluster. Okay, let's connect to the master VM. And here we can also, just for the ease of demonstration, I'm going to connect to Desktop Studio on the master VM. And this way, with that, I don't have to switch all the time. Okay, great. So here we are again. Okay, now here, this is, I previously set up an ANSYS Fluent Cluster with 2 nodes. We can just hit connect here and execute the downloaded executable, and everything is configured directly. Okay, the ANSYS Fluent is automatically launched. Everything is pre-filled, so all the cluster nodes know each other. We can see here the cluster has 88 cores in total. Here we can see the ANSYS host file containing all the nodes. Everything has been set up on the fly directly through that exe. So the simulation expert just have to select his case and start the process. Okay. So here, when we go back, Now I want to show you how easy it is to change the cluster. Okay, let's just close that again. Here we can hit OK. And here now we can say, okay, I have a different project where I need more or less cores. Now let's say I need more cores. So I go up, let's say I could go up to 100, but this I don't want to do now. So let's go to 4 cores, to 4 nodes. Click OK. And the cluster will be resized automatically. Okay, now we see 5 nodes because it does over provisioning. At the end there will be 4 nodes here. While it's doing that, I want to show you how easy it is to create a new cluster and have it in a setup as the one before, as the existing one. Okay, so we go to new resource, select we want to have a new cluster. Select the application of the cluster, which application shall run in the cluster. If you don't see your application here, it's not an effort for us to make it available to you. What will come within a short period of time will be the Siemens Star CCM Plus software. So now let's say I select another Fluent cluster. Or let's say I select the CFX. Here I can specify some details. Those are just for demo purposes. They are pre-filled, so not every user has to select everything again. Okay. Now I can select the VM size every node has. As with regular VMs and regular applications, the VM size, the recommended VM sizes are showed here. For CFX, the HC44 is the VM size of choice. But of course, if you want to have another one, you can just hit all and search through your through all the VMs available to you in your location. Just be aware that here also low priority VMs will be showed. And low priority VMs, they may cost next to nothing, but they can be shut down when they are needed elsewhere. So just be aware of that when you create the cluster. I'm going to search for an H series. Okay, so I can go with full text search. I want to use the H16 promo series. Here I can see it cost me $1.36 about, and it seems that I have enough cores left in my quota. So I select it, I give the cluster a name, let's name it CFX demo cluster, and I can assign the number of VMs I want to have set up initially. So here I select 2. Oops, now I went back, I went in the wrong direction. So I selected that one. Here we are. Okay, perfect. So now the cluster is going to be initiated, and as soon as the initiation process has successfully started, I will be redirected to my overview again. Here I can see my CFX demo cluster, which now will be filled with nodes. Here we can see it's over provisioning. There will be, at the end of the process, there will be 2 nodes. Okay, perfect. So now the next thing I want to show you is the shutdown timers. Okay, we have, for simulation purposes, we have shutdown timers on virtual machines as well as on clusters. Okay, because maybe you just want to do a small simulation, or you have a simulation which you cannot run in parallel very good, so one VM is enough, and you want to start that simulation on Friday evening, and as soon as the simulation is done, it should stop, and VM should shut down automatically, so you save money. Okay, so this on the VM itself, we can go to the shutdown timers. Here we have the shutdown timer based on CPU usage, which we can enable. And then we can say, okay, the VM shall be shut down within 30 minutes if the CPU load is less than 10%. Okay, it is important for you to know that this shutdown timer is only if no user sessions are active. So either the VM is empty or you have only disconnected users on that VM. Why did we do that? This is because if you work on that VM, okay, and you do some pre-processing, then you don't want to have to disable the shutdown timer every time you do that. But if you start the simulation and you go home, you just disconnect from your VM, and then the CPU usage-based shutdown timer will kick in. Okay, so the next here on the cluster, we of course have shutdown timers defined as well. Okay, if we click here, we have two different types of shutdown timer. The first one is again the one we already know based on CPU load and idle time. Okay, the next one is the cluster application based shutdown timer. What Desktop Studio did is we examined every application in detail so we know exactly when the worker is in use and when it's not. Because there may be processes in the worker between like simulation steps where some files have to be copied or something else have to be made, which will not run on all the CPUs available, so you can easily fall into that like limit you defined here. And if you don't want that, you can say we also surveillance the cluster application, whether the cluster application itself is in active or in standby or in idle mode. And here we can specify that the cluster then should automatically shut down after a certain amount of time. Okay, so now here we can see after the resizing process, we have the connect button again. We can easily connect. There are 4 VMs now in the cluster. We can hit the execution button again. Let's just look at here. Here we can see there are 4 VMs available. And then we see, wow, now we have 176 cores available, already configured. Everything has been updated, so we can just start the simulation again with a lot more cores. Okay, our goal is really to make it as easy as possible for the simulation expert to fire up his cluster on demand for his project with the right amount of cores, because as we know, more cores are not always better. Okay, perfect. So the cluster here is still in progress. It is nearly done. This we can see here because we have already 4 nodes running. It will resize in a short period of time, and then we will be able to connect to it as well. Great. To stop a cluster, we can just hit stop, and then it stopped. And after it stopped, we can remove it. Okay, and this is everything it needs. So if you have a project you want to do now, you have some minutes to set it up, to fire up the cluster, run it, stop it, delete it, and you have no more costs.